she immediately caught my attention by saying, I'm not going to show you a AI solution that's going to make you more efficient. I'm going to show you a solution that's going to take your job away. And I was like, oh, hang on, this is interesting.
Welcome to Beyond Billable, Driving Conversations. I am Pim Bettist, founder of Clay Richard, legal AI consultants. Each episode, I get behind the wheel of a fully electric Neo with a thought leader from the legal world. We drive and talk about what AI is changing in legal right now. You will hear practical ideas you can apply this week, clear views on business model adaptations, and honest stories from teams that are already working differently. In this episode, I get behind the wheel with Hans Albers, Director of Legal Management Consulting at Deloitte in the Netherlands. Before Deloitte, Hans led worldwide legal operations as Chief of Staff to the General Counsel at Juniper Networks, and he served as President of ACC Europe, giving him a rare view of how in-house teams operate. We explore how legal ops is moving from a niche support function to a strategic capability, how adaptation is different from transformative change, and why process has to come before the tools. Hans shares what AI is already good at in legal work, from reviewing 100 contracts to extracting the data business leaders need, and what that means for law firms whose clients can do more and more without their help. Expect candid views on the skills lawyers need to stay ahead, and an unfiltered take on the fast-changing legal landscape. I hope you enjoy this driving conversation with Hans Albers. Welcome, Hans.
Yeah, nice to be here, Ryan. Good morning.
Yeah, we're in kind of a special studio. This is a Neo fully electric car,
Right.
And it's kind of special because we have some water and fridge. Would you like some?
Sure, thank you.
Go. What I love about this company is that they've done something really innovative, which is you don't have to charge this car. Like, you don't have to charge the battery. You can, but you don't have to.
Right.
Because you can actually swap it.
Right.
And to do something like that, you have to be quite innovative and think out of the box, but also you have to come up with the idea, but then also you have to execute it.
Right.
And I think it's inspiring for our target audience. So,
Innovative. Right.
be innovative and also actually, execute on it. But having you in the car is also quite beneficiary for our target audience.
Okay.
I'm very happy you wanted to have this conversation with me, driving conversation with me. Can you tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My name is Hans Albers. I'm a Director of Legal Management Consulting at Deloitte. I'm leading the practice in the Netherlands since about 5 years when we started this brand new team. And we focus on legal function transformation, legal operations and technology. And obviously a lot of focus these days is around the application of AI for lawyers, which is an interesting but also challenging subject. And my background is I'm an in-house lawyer. Before I joined Deloitte, I was head of legal operations at Juniper Networks, and before that in different other roles as in-house counsel at companies like Cisco and Fujitsu. And been also very focused on the community of in-house lawyers for a long time. I spent 6 years, I think, on the board of ACC, which we can talk about a little bit later. Yeah, I loved the Association of Corporate Counsel, and worked a few years in the US as head of legal for the US for Cisco. So a bit of a background.
Sounds like you have a lot of experience with the function of in-house legal.
Right.
Can you talk a little bit about that? What makes a good in-house legal counsel, and how's the role of such a person changing in the law?
The in-house counsel role is a very interesting one. I often tell people that I think as a lawyer, it's probably, in my view at least, the most interesting role you can have as a lawyer. I think the role of in-house counsel gives you an opportunity to be really close to the business and focus on, the solving the issues for their business, for the business leadership. And it can be all sorts of regulatory issues, contracting issues, corporate issues. But you're always very close to where things are happening or being decided in the company. Even though as a lawyer, you will have a different perspective on risk than the CEO. For the CEO and the business leaders, taking risk is part of what they do, because that's what helps them grow the business. And as a lawyer, you need to find a way to balance that. But it's very different from being outside counsel, where you basically give advice, and then it's up to the business, to your client, what they do with the advice, and they can ignore it, and etc. As a in-house lawyer, you're so much closer to it. I always tell people when I interview people for coming from a law firm to an in-house role, I said, you actually have to live with your advice. If you give a client, your business client, your internal client, a piece of advice, it usually goes far more than just being advice. It needs to actually be executed, be implemented. And if your advice was wrong, you still have to live with the consequences, right? You still have to figure out a solution of that going forward. So I think it's a very challenging role, because it can be very demanding as well. I think at the time that an in-house lawyer was a more relaxed role than being, in a law firm, is definitely past. I think that's history. That's a cliche, no longer true. They're very different roles in a different context, and I think in many ways, one of the most interesting roles a lawyer can have.
So what are the most common challenges that these lawyers have, these in-house lawyers?
I think there is, when obviously in my current role, I speak to a lot of general counsels and senior lawyers. There's a couple of things that stand out. One has been around for many, many years, which is there is always more work than we can handle. We always have a shortage of people, and there is too much work for us to handle. The second challenge, which I'm hearing certainly in the last couple of years, is the huge amount of new regulations and laws coming out from everywhere, basically from Europe, from international. Currently, all these trade laws with the US are increasing and making things more complex. There's all the digital regulations, the AI Act, and all these things make things more complex. If you're in a regulated industry like banking or insurance, there is always something new happening on a regulatory front, and it's difficult to keep up with. And I think the third challenge, which is a far more recent one, which is, how are we going to deal with the arrival of AI for lawyers? What does it mean for the legal function as such? So yeah, there's plenty of challenges next to the regular challenge of just doing your work and advising your business to be successful and growing at a safe and compliant way, right?
Is it changing the role because of generative AI?
Absolutely. I think it's changing in many ways. I think one of the reasons it's changing is that lawyers will now have tools at their fingertips that they can do their work in a different way. But I think there is, a far more interesting part that I see as well. Well, look at some of the tools and the way these tools allow you to analyze contracts, not just one contract, but 100 contracts or 1,000 contracts or 10,000 contracts. It allows you to extract information from these contracts that are valuable or may be valuable to your business, where you can give a different kind of perspective on the challenges that the business is dealing with. So, for instance, I remember a case where probably it was about 10 years ago, my CFO asked me if he could change the prices on a large number of contracts. And he said, can you run me a report on all the contracts where I have a clause where I can change the contracts, the prices? And I said, well, I have no idea. I mean, yes, we have 10,000 agreements in our contract database, but I have no tools or systems to analyze these contracts. Now, with AI, you have these tools and you can actually do it. So you can help your business in a different way that was previously not possible. So that makes your role different. And I think the other thing is that because you can be more efficient in dealing with basic contract review that maybe before would take you several hours can now be done in minutes, right? So you can spend your time on different things. The cliche being you can be more strategic. Now, a lot of lawyers I talk to don't actually know what that means. Well, what does it mean to be more strategic as a lawyer? I mean, that's an interesting question, but that's what you can do. You can be spending more time with your business, spending more time understanding the business, rather than getting stuck in endless hours of contract review, redlining, and drafting, which you still need to do, but you can do it with tools that make it a far more efficient process.
So the role is becoming way more interesting, basically.
I think so. Yeah, I really think so. Yeah.
Do you see the right level of adoption when it comes to these tools of like document reviewing? Obviously, is a very low hanging fruit.
To be honest, not yet. I would say. I think what I'm seeing, and a lot of organizations are doing pilots with various tools. Pilots usually mean there's 4 people who are enthusiastic about a tool, and then start to tinker with it, or they use different tools. I talk to a lot of people who say, yeah, we've got this Copilot license and it's great for reviewing my emails. Okay, fine. Sounds like a glorified spell checker to me. So I think you need to really think about, what AI can do in transforming your way of working. And, we're actually spending more time talking to clients. Okay, buying the tool is one thing, and then adopting it is it's not a one-time event. It's not just like, okay, everybody goes through the AI training, they got the tool training, and that's it. That's not where it stops, that's where it starts, right? So you really need to think through the whole change process, the change management process. And I'm actually working on a project right now together with a group of colleagues from Deloitte Human Capital Consulting who do nothing but workforce transformation. And now we're focusing on the workforce transformation for the legal function, because that's just a different ballgame altogether. And I think that's important for a head of legal, a general counsel, to think about. This is not a one-time activity. It takes planning, it takes time, it takes effort, it takes a lot of communication. Why are you doing this? Why are we rolling out the tool? This applies to all tools in a way, I think. We often hear people after 2 years going like, yeah, we bought the tool, but nobody's using it. But maybe they didn't know why they got it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. What am I supposed to do with this? I can still do things the old way. I think one lesson I learned a long time ago is if you give people the tool to do their work in a different way, you need to make sure that they don't have any alternative ways of doing it. So if there was an old system, take away the old system. Don't let dual systems exist next to each other. If you roll out a document generation tool, don't let people still use the old way of just downloading a document from the hard drive and adapting it. I think you need to be really thinking through your processes. And this is why my advice, or generally, is that first look at your processes before you buy a tool. Because if you don't fix your processes and buy a tool, then you still have the broken process, but it's automated. So it's not necessarily any better, maybe worse.
Exactly.
the idea often is that a tool will fix the broken process, and that's not necessarily true. There may be cases where it works, but if it's a complex process, yeah, it won't be fixed by just putting a tool on it. That's unfortunately a little. I wish the world was that simple.
How about legal operation? That must be booming at the moment.
It is. It's really moving from a niche function to becoming a more strategic role within the legal function. And this is something which we saw happening in the US probably already 10 years ago. And then it started to happen in Europe as well, probably UK first. But now recently, in the last, I would say 12 to 18 months, I've seen it changing in the Netherlands as well. There's a lot of organizations that we're talking to who are setting up their first legal operations role, or renewing it or changing it. But understanding that it's a core competency to have in the organization, because doing it on the side, which is what a lot of organizations and teams were doing before, it's like, yeah, somebody will have to do this on, 0.2% of their time. That's just not a viable solution. You really need somebody who has the skill set and understanding, because it's a different skill set, I think. And we see many roles where legal operations are not done by a lawyer, but by somebody with a finance background or an IT background, or both. So it helps to understand how lawyers work, but you don't have to be a lawyer. I think that's the key difference. And it does actually help if you understand a little bit more about implementing technology. A lot of the legal operations role is about picking and choosing the right tools for the department to work with, and making sure you have the business case for it and the budgets, and actually doing the implementation of the tool. That's not the sort of typical skill set of a lawyer. Well, most lawyers are poor project managers to begin with, and don't necessarily are very experienced at building a business case for buying a tool.
It seems to me that they also sit on a huge amount of data,
Right.
that is necessary for them to kind of prove that they're necessary in the organization. Am I assuming correctly?
That is true. I think that's still, though, I think an area where a lot of legal functions are still trying to find their way, what sort of data they have and how they can effectively utilize it, and whether you need really specific tools to utilize the data, or whether you can use generic tools, which is, by the way, I think interesting that AI, if you look at some of those AI assistant tools you have in the market right now, like Harvey and Agora and those guys, these tools allow you to use the data that's sitting in your organization, even if it's not structured. It could be a bunch of agreements, contracts, it could be litigation files, it could be files from outside counsel, it could be your budgets, your spend. With these AI tools, you can search and work with this data, this information that doesn't have to be that structured, to be honest. It needs to be secure, and all that sort of requirements need to be met before it's used. If you, for instance, take the comparison, if you're buying or implementing a contract lifecycle tool for your managing your contracts need to be in a good shape, right? They need to be in a way that can be used by the CLM platform. And AI is not so picky about these things, which is interesting. And I spoke to the chief information officer of a client the other day, together with the general counsel, who talked about a CLM tool, and the CIO took the view like, well, I don't necessarily want a separate tool. I really want to be able to use that data as a data pool or data lake, whatever word you use these days. And I just want tools that can use that data lake without being very point specific on what I want to do with it. So I think this is an interesting development that I had not really foreseen that this would happen. But I think with the arrival of AI, this is now starting to happen. So
It's amazing.
well, it is in a way. I mean, I've seen so much change in my time as an in-house counsel, where people 25 years ago were excited about electronic signatures or a corporate database where you could find information. There's so much more that you can do today, even the contract drafting and these AI assistants for a lawyer. I mean, it's pretty cool. But it raises the question as well on, what's the future of the legal role?
Yeah, exactly. And the ACC wrote a really cool report about that. But first, can you tell the people that don't know about ACC what it is and what they do?
Yeah, ACC is an association for in-house lawyers. So it's a U.S. organization, and in the U.S. it's extremely big. But in Europe, it's also pretty big. I think 45,000 lawyers worldwide are a member. It's like the in-house equivalent of the IBA, if you can say, right?
Okay.
And in Europe, I think there's about 4,500 members in in-house roles, and it's truly a networking community, sharing experiences, sharing knowledge. There's separate development programs as well that ACC offers. I think in the Netherlands there's about 300-400 people active in ACC. So yeah, and it's a very interesting organization that organizes events and the annual conference, and doing a lot around the development of the legal function. They've been an advocate for two things in recent times. Is one, making sure that legal has a seat at the table, so that the general counsel reports to the CEO. And secondly, there's an ongoing discussion that ACC is leading in Europe, is the right for legal privilege for in-house counsel. So they've had some success in that space. But they're still pushing Brussels and local regulators to acknowledge legal privilege for in-house counsel, which is common in Anglo-Saxon countries, but not in most of Europe.
That's interesting. Yeah, I read their report with a lot of joy because there was a lot of information in there.
Right.
One is that adoptions are skyrocketing.
Right.
And your comments on LinkedIn about this was that adoption is not the same as transformative change.
No.
Can you elaborate on that?
Well, adoption means that people have access to the tool and maybe using it, but you have to be thinking about, how can I transform the way I work? How do I provide legal support within the organization? And that's a longer discussion and a bigger discussion that takes more analytics of how people work. We often look at these things before adopting a tool, an AI tool, and how do people actually work? Where do they spend their time? You need to understand where people spend their time, so you can then drive from adoption to change and transformative change to get the most out of it and make the most transformation out of the adoption of a tool. So adoption is like a one-time measurement. The transformative aspect is much longer.
And way more complicated.
Indeed. Yeah, it takes more planning and thoughts, right?
Yeah, I understand. The second thing that struck stuck out from this report was that legal departments are becoming way more self-sufficient, and that they're outsourcing less to law firms.
Yep.
That sounds very logical, because they're using the tools.
Yep.
They're becoming smarter, if you will.
Yep.
What's your advice to law firms to mitigate the risk of losing business?
It's an interesting challenge, and I think a lot of law firms are now beginning to realize that this is impacting them. I think for a long time, law firms were looking at AI as a efficiency tool for their own lawyers, right? So that raises a different set of questions as well, because if your lawyer takes 20 minutes instead of 2 hours to do a legal piece of work, a piece of advice, how are you actually going to charge a client for that? So that's a different discussion. So they were already aware of that and looking at how to approach that. But now I think I've also talked to law firms, they're beginning to realize that, hang on, because our clients have these tools at their fingertips on their dashboard, they now can do a lot of research themselves. And I saw a company, general counsel, doing this, writing a legal opinion using only an AI assistant. And it also occurred to me then that as a law firm, you need to get much closer to your clients, understanding their business. How do they make money? Where do they make money? So you can actually tailor your advice to what really matters and what is not easily doable by an AI assistant. So you need to get higher up the stack in terms of the quality of work that the law firm is providing. But it's a very, very interesting challenge, and to some degree, I see law firms beginning to realize it's transformational or even existential. Because if they don't get it right, they will lose a lot of business. And that's interesting, because now we're seeing these discussions happening with law firms, and I think nobody has this sort of magic bullet solution. And it also means that they also need to look at what organization do we need to be as a law firm? Do we need those hundreds of junior lawyers, or do we need to have a different workforce to provide the best service to our clients? Now, what that means to the job market for overall lawyers is an interesting question. And just this morning, I read a report by Goldman Sachs that said that over the next 2 years, 1.7% of legal jobs is at risk. I thought that was a bit curious, to be honest. Very, very low, because previous numbers were like, and probably just 40%, and now they've changed it. And I'm not sure what drove that change. I haven't read the full report. I only read the article. Well, 1.7 seems extremely low, because there are a lot of low-level legal jobs that can be removed by AI or AI agents, especially.
Did you read the NRC article about universities? It basically was an advice to universities to ban the use of generative AI.
Yeah, that's, I guess in a way I wasn't surprised, but more disappointed. We know from history that banning things like this never works, right? And it's futile. I think I understand the struggle that universities have, but also law firms have, and we as Deloitte have it, and everybody has it. How do you train young people first to become, a professional during their academic career, but also during, their training period, when they have access to tools that were unimaginable, a few years ago. So that's a very difficult challenge, and no one has actually solved that. But banning it is not the solution. I think I see it with my team of young professionals. Most of them are between 2 and 4 or 5 years graduates. they are very effectively using AI to do their work. And that makes them not dumber, it makes them smarter. It makes them a different kind of person, a different kind of lawyer. The role will change, no doubt, but I think banning it in university is futile. It's going to happen anyway, and people have the access to all these technology, and they will use it, right? And I think the academics and the universities need to figure out how do we train people to become still a good lawyers who can understand things and apply judgment to difficult situations or problems, challenges. But banning the tool is not the solution. I think it's and it's futile. It's not going to work. So that's my take at least. And I know there's a lot of debate on this topic still happening.
Dario Amodei, what's it? It was Amodei. I keep getting his name wrong. Dario Amodei. He's the CEO of Anthropic.
Yeah.
And he writes a lot about AI. And he recently warned about a white-collar bloodbath.
Right.
Now, I always take this with a grain of salt because warning about existential risks with AI is also a form of marketing. Right? Show off how effective the AI is. But what is your take on this risk?
I think it's real. I think it's, let's not underestimate the risk. I think it's a real risk. It's a real risk for legal jobs, both in law firms as well as in in-house counsel. If your job can be automated, then at least a large part of it, might go away. If you're doing repeatable work, it will probably go away at some point. And let's not forget that he probably had this in mind when he said this, that AI is still at the early stages. It's not a finished product, as Richard Susskind in his latest book, Thinking About AI, said. Like the mistake people make is thinking like, well, look, AI is hallucinating, it's not working, it makes mistakes. True, to some degree, but it's still developing and it's not finished. It's not done yet. We're only 2 years and a bit in, maybe 3 years soon, but still it's early days, and the rate of improvement and change is only accelerating. The technology is accelerating. So I think in a couple of years' time, things will be very different. I looked at an AI agent tool the other day that was pretty good at handling basic legal tasks without human supervision. Reviewing an incoming contract, an NDA in this example, reviewing it against the playbook standard, giving it the okay, and then sending it off for signature. And typically the company who's building these agents said that most clients still want some form of supervision on the agent, but I mean, that feels a little bit like the guy on the electric train that was there to shuffle the coal, right? You're supervising an AI agent that's probably doing a pretty good job.
Yeah, I was reading The Economist, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago, and they were talking about a potential growth in GDP of 20% annually. That's never ever happened.
No.
And they explained that the ones that would be making the income increase would be the ones that would be able to assist the AI. So especially where the AI is still not capable and needs to be controlled, that's where the money is.
Right.
And it sounds like in legal and with strategic advice, all the intelligence that's coming up to the surface now. Humans will, with a legal background and good logical thinking capabilities, will be able to be making a lot of money in the foreseeable future because they are necessary to check the outcomes, right? Or am I being too positive here?
Maybe a little bit optimistic, I think, but maybe the money is also where these tools and agents are being developed. And as we can see, if you follow the legal press, there is a lot of investment money pouring into all sorts of startups and AI companies. And that's not without reason. I think that's where a lot of these things are happening. And these organizations need lawyers to build these tools, help them build these tools. And I think that the judgment part is still going to play a significant role over the next couple of years, five years, maybe. I don't know. It's hard to say, but I think it's changing, rapidly.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for. That's not going to work. The viewers will not know how I'm getting some driving advice here. But I'm also processing what you said, because that's quite significant, because it basically means that people with a legal profession might do themselves a good favor if they started looking out for other jobs outside of where they're working now.
Yeah, I think, what I'm seeing is that people are adding skill sets to their legal skill set, like, understanding more about technology, more understanding about process and operations, because that's what's going to be required, I think, is how you can help your organization or your clients in a different way. Agents. And I've recently come across a company called Flank AI. It's a German American company. They're primarily based in Germany. They've developed an agentic AI solution that actually works pretty well, I think, and I've been very impressed. And the co-founder of the company is a lady called Lillian Breidenbach. And I think you should probably talk to her, because she's got an interesting perspective. When I first met her, she was doing a demo of her tool. She immediately caught my attention by saying, "I'm not going to show you a AI solution that's going to make you more efficient. I'm going to show you a solution that's going to take your job away." And I was like, "Oh, hang on, this is interesting." So, you should probably talk to Lillian. I think she's quite a fun character and a visionary in this space.
That sounds great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Joining me for this ride.
Welcome.
Thank you for listening to Beyond Billable, Driving Conversations. This podcast is a collaboration with Neo. If you found this episode meaningful, please subscribe or leave us a review. And if you have any questions about this episode, feel free to reach out via hello@clayrichard.eu.